Greiner Talks, about sustainability and transformation. A Greiner podcast episode.
How to become a sustainable business and how to change. That's what we are discussing here. My name is Alexander. I'm part of the sustainability team here at the Greiner Group headquarters in Austria. And when speaking about sustainability, at least for me, it's all about people. And I hope that my guest today will agree with me. She is an actress. She's based in the UK, and she's the founder and director of a business called Acting Up. Hello, Emma Currie.
Hello, Alexander. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for taking your time, Emma. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Emma, before diving into what you and what your business are actually doing, I'd like to raise a very general question. You're an actress, and this is a sustainability podcast. How does acting and sustainability go together? And how does acting and changing behavior go together?
I think we only have a sustainability question because we're a world crammed full of people. And managing people is really what sustainability is all about. So as a performer and as somebody who writes what I see, I suppose I'm holding the mirror up to what people do and the behaviors that go with it, and give people a chance to see themselves through the eyes of the culture or through the eyes of other people. So hopefully, in doing that, they have a think about their own behaviors, and they have a think about what it means to be a good society and all that. So really, it's very aligned with what theatre's always done, which is showing people who they are.
And Emma, you have published a book called The Philosophy of the Red Shoes. And in the introduction, there is a quote saying, "If we speak human, we change culture." What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that when you go into a corporate environment, there's a lot of corporate buzzwords. There's a language of efficiency that can sometimes become like sort of corporate wallpaper. People hear it so often, this particular language that you would never use when you were out with your friends or speaking to your family or your loved ones. And it's a language to do with targets and, just the matrix that the corporate world likes to use to organize its people. So when I have a chance to speak to people who are in the corporate world, I always make sure that I use the language of kind of friendship and human connection and avoid some of those corporate buzzwords.
You are a professional actress. You're also running a business called Acting Up, and you're using storytelling to change culture. Very often you're using that storytelling to change culture around health and safety in particular, and often when it comes to larger companies or to heavy industries. How does that work, and what's the reactions that you get from audiences?
I think that in an environment that might be, say, an engineering environment, there's a lot of logical thinking and a lot of models and sort of simplification of systems and processes in order to coordinate production from huge numbers of people. It's very difficult, therefore, when you start as a business looking at the behaviors that go with that, because inevitably, we're not yet robots. And we all have our human foibles and our human traits and qualities and weaknesses and strengths. So how can a piece of corporate information, or how could a pie chart, how could a PowerPoint presentation ever hope to capture the human spirit in the corporate narrative? So I bring that human element to the corporate story.
So what I want to discuss with you today is health and safety. And often when health and safety comes up in a corporate setting, it's not the topic that people get very excited about. There is innovation, there is new technologies, there is digitization, and all of that sounds much more exciting. Why is that? Shouldn't health and safety be the most important thing for all of us?
Health and safety is both the most important thing in the world and also the dullest thing in the world at the same time. I think it's become particularly boring to people because there's so much mind-numbing paperwork goes with it and process-focused elements to it, where people feel it slows them down, and it's about form filling, and it's just a kind of box-ticking exercise. But actually, health and safety, when you drill right down into the heart of it, is actually about living well and bringing your best self into work and communicating well with your colleagues and being real, a real person that genuinely looks at how vulnerable you are and the people around you are and what task you have at hand that you want to complete in a way that's going to be successful and not risky for anybody. And it's about, at the end of the day, it's about not dying if at all possible. But it becomes so much more than that. And I love the fact that it can be the driest subject in the world, but the pendulum also swings to it becoming the richest of philosophies, and really it asks questions of ourselves to do with what it means to live well.
Could it be the case that often health and safety is kind of connected with rules and regulations, and many people just don't like rules and regulations so much?
I think people really don't like rules and regulations eventually. I think everybody recognizes that we have to follow a certain number of rules in order to create order and progress and all that stuff. But rules just seem to grow and expand. They become like weeds in a garden. They just take over the whole thing if you don't, if you're not constantly looking at them and assessing them and understanding whether they're really necessary. Rules rarely get undone, but they very easily get added as each individual tries to make a contribution to what they see as the efficiencies of the business or their environment.
In your book, The Philosophy of the Red Shoes, you're saying that you hope that there will be a future that is more about humans than about systems which have become too big. Does that go into the same direction?
Yes, it does. I really hope that. One of the things, it's very interesting just now with this sort of looming transhumanism and all, this sort of artificial intelligence age, the fourth industrial revolution and all that. There's something very interesting that I think has been forgotten about, which is the human spirit and who we are culturally and what we do with our emotions if we are to become part of a bigger transhuman type of matrix. What do we do with our spirits? What do we do with our humanity? I don't think that there's enough opportunity to really ask the right questions about who we want to be as people, as humans.
With your business Acting Up, you have held performances around this topic of health and safety in many countries. And the one that drew my attention to you originally is a video called Greiners Shoes. You were giving that performance for a large company in Denmark. Anybody who wants to see that can look it up on YouTube. Can you explain a little bit about that performance without revealing too much?
Greiners Shoes is a simple story that really nails how complex an accident can be in terms of how it plays out on our lives, our personal lives. It's the story of a crumbling marriage, and it's told in quite a provocative way. She's this character appears much to the surprise of the audience, who usually are expecting to see a PowerPoint presentation with statistics and graphs and things about health and safety. And then suddenly this character, Gail, arrives on the scene laughing about the excesses of the night before. And she starts to talk to the audience and describe how she got to this place, this crazy situation that she's in. She's in a bedsheet and a pair of red high heels. So she's, she certainly gets the attention immediately of the audience. But then as her story rolls out, you realize that she's been picking up the pieces of an accident that her husband had at work a few years before. And it's really the story of the impact on both their lives and the ripple effect of this moment of human error. So it's filled with poignancy. It's very much embedded in the human story, but it's also the story of when things go wrong corporately, when the system fails in some way, be it because there's a behavior gone wrong or a process gone wrong. You never actually know what has gone wrong. You just have to fill in those gaps yourself. So that story is both very simple and very complex, because it really reveals why health and safety is so important, so crucial.
And coming back to a business context, here at Greiner, there is 11,500 colleagues around the world, and more than 8,000 of them work in our production facilities. And with that number of people, accidents do happen. That's kind of impossible to avoid, but we can do our very best to help prevent them. What can we do to create that culture of safety? What have you learned from your workshops and performances?
I think the most important thing, because I go in just as a storyteller and somebody who drives a process, and the process allows people, through simple, slightly quirky questions that I put to them, to talk in groups and connect with each other. And I think the most important thing people can do is talk to each other in a casual way. And I think organizations will quite often attempt to make a formula out of these conversations, or create feedback cards, or they want to control how the conversations happen. But the best conversations happen in a very informal way. And in fact, it's one of the companies I worked at had a couple of years before I worked there with them, they'd cancelled what they called a bacon roll session on a Friday morning, which was a chance to just literally eat bacon rolls and have cups of tea and coffee and talk to each other casually. And they cancelled it, ironically, in the name of efficiency, because they had too many meetings, they had too much work to do. So they thought they were being more efficient by getting rid of this session. But actually what they did instead was they stopped information being exchanged casually. And that was vital safety information. And also they stopped the bonding that goes with that, the investment in each other and the building up of the family spirit, if you like. So I think the best thing a company can do to be safe is to allow breathing space to their employees. Don't imagine that pushing people harder is going to make for greater efficiency, greater safety. I'd say let people connect in a human way, in a casual way.
Speaking of communication and efficiency, now when working on improving health and safety in a multinational corporation, it is often about strategy, it's about budgets, it's about the frequency of accidents. Basically, it's about numbers. But behind all these numbers are people, people's lives. How do you deal with that contrast? Is that something that comes up in your workshops?
The whole story of Gail's shoes began life as a statistic, as a lost time incident. And it strikes me that you become quite immune to these statistics. They don't really help to humanize the environment. And in fact, sometimes I've seen maybe people, when there's sort of, 300 days without an accident on this site or something. A lot of that pressure will mean that people don't actually report an accident, or they feel scared to ruin this record that's being held over them. They don't want to sort of lose the prize for the class, So I can understand the need for looking at targets and profit and loss and numbers and all that side of things. That's what business is. But I think it can be counterproductive when it comes to encouraging people to connect as human beings, because it's not natural to identify with statistics and numbers, is my view.
And do you have any particular advice to our managers and to our colleagues here at Greiner? What can each and every one of us do to avoid that or to protect each other?
I think it's difficult for managers because you're expected to look like you're in control, when actually a lot of the knowledge and information you need in a company comes from the people on the tools, the people on the factory floor. They're the ones that are making the product and working with the machinery. And so then it's for managers to somehow bring in these layers of efficiency. And I think just the nature of the human ego might be that they want to create an initiative that has their name stamped on it. They want to champion that cause within the business and demonstrate efficacy as a result, when actually all they need to be is a sounding board, I suppose, for the people that are actually doing the work, people that are actually producing the goods. They're the ones with the real knowledge. They're the ones that know whether the design process is working or what kind of syndromes and behaviors are at large, what's affecting the mindset of the people on the machines that might be, say, unsafe or inefficient or whatever. That, the role of the manager, therefore, I would urge the manager to become a coach and somebody who nurtures and facilitates the needs of the people on the factory floor. So I would suggest turning the whole triangle upside down, the corporate pyramid upside down, and seeing the bosses and the managers as the servants of the workers.
Emma, I'd like to ask 10 more questions, but we're slowly coming to an end of this conversation. So last but not least, could I invite you to do a short word rap with me?
Sure.
So I will give you one word, one term, and you can reply with whatever comes to your mind. That can be just one word, can be one sentence, whatever.
Yeah.
So the first one, acting.
Up.
Glasgow.
Rough.
The Little White Pig.
Best pub in Edinburgh's New Town.
Anything else you can share about that?
Yes, I run it. It's my pub.
I hope I can make it there one day.
I hope you can.
The Red Shoes.
Symbol of safety.
Health.
Vitamin D.
And last but not least, your message to the world.
Keep the human spirit alive and don't let fear grind you down. If you feel crunchy, difficult feelings inside you, it's because the world around you, the environment around you, isn't catering for your humanness. Keep your human spirit sparking.
Thank you for that wonderful conversation, Emma.
Thank you very much, Alexander.
And thank you everybody for listening to this conversation. Subscribe to our podcast. Look up Emma Currie on YouTube. Have a nice day and stay safe.
Greiner Talks, a Greiner podcast. Subscribe now.